Evening, everybody. How are we?
Good, thank you.
Good,
Good.
thank you.
Good. So we've got 2 hours and I'm going to be chairing. So, I mean, hopefully we can get to a sort of structured, pointed, but obviously creative session. And I think the big thing for everyone is we get to sort of meaningful outputs that we all think we can make some impact in the real world. And with this group and with these connections, etc., I think we can definitely do that rather than go, oh, that's a nice idea. I think we can actually get to, you know, we're all employers and large organizations, etc. So I think we can actually get to, well, we can help this by doing stuff in our own companies.
So currently between 6 and 7% of people who have learning disabilities in this country are employed. This is staggeringly lower than the national average. And interestingly, this group have polled as the group who are most keen on working. So why there's this discrepancy? That's really why you're in the room. There are loads of blocks, loads of stumbling problems in terms of how to progress through. If you've met one person with autism, you've just met one person with autism. You don't know anything about autism. So it's that matter of personalizing what can be done, how to guide that through. But if you look about it from the other side, from the employer's side, if an employer is looking for somebody that won't quit because they really like the dependability and the continuum of turning up at the same place every day, absolutely, they'll never quit. If they learn to do a task right once, it will be repeated perfectly. Absolutely, time and time again. If you get somebody who is going to appreciate being around other people and working every day, you can't ask for more. So why aren't employers tapping this resource? I understand at the moment, you know, the world's on fire. It's just about the worst time. But we're going to come out of this. And what we don't want is a whole load of people who are disabled to become more disabled in the employment business.
It's a Project Diamond is a scheme which is was created by the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 to measure the diversity of everybody in front of and behind the cameras in terms of broadcast. And because of Project Diamond and because of that measurement, you tend to see, you've seen improvements certainly in kind of on-screen, you know, incidental presence of people who are disabled or disabled people. I think the thing about neurodiversity is, of course, it's often an invisible disability. There's something about what's currently acceptable in popular culture that I think the media can unlock, that I think can help to unlock what goes on in terms of businesses as well. Because I agree with you, Naomi, there's an awful lot of talking a good game and then discomfort in the actual practical execution of policy.
One of like a successful established model of doing this sort of task is to create a reality or fictional, doesn't matter which, but drama where, so for instance, when Educating Rita was in the cinemas, first applications to Open University by working class women doubled because you could sort of see yourself going that way. And I think for the average business person in the UK who's probably running a medium-sized, you know, if they're a manager, a medium-sized firm, seeing the sort of touching and frustrating and true human journey and just seeing somebody going on that journey would probably in itself, you know, it wouldn't touch everybody, but it would move things forward because you would move out of a space where this is a little bit unknown and I have all sorts of questions. So actually seeing a whole bunch of realistic stuff, including some benefits. But anyway, it's quite, another fact was that the movie Train Spotting doubled tourism to Scotland, and it was not an entirely positive.
But on a non-fictional side, the One Bomb Every Minute, you know, that was the documentaries about birthing units solved the midwife recruitment problem.
Is this about, maybe it's about both, but is this about being much more about vive la différence? Is this about, you know, diversity of thought if you are, if as an employer you're open-minded to recruiting and retaining talent of many different flavors and types and everything, you're probably going to have a better chance of accidentally hiring somebody who has autism or dyslexia or some kind of you know, neurodiverse learning challenge. Or is it about getting people who have those things to be more confident to be able to state it? Because I sit there and I think, well, if I'm interviewing somebody, to your point, Naomi, if I'm interviewing somebody for a job and they won't make eye contact with me, I'm going to find it a little strange, and I'm going to wonder why. Now, maybe if I'm well educated on these issues, I might think maybe they're autistic, maybe they have blah, blah, blah. But often for most people in business, I'll just go, yeah, that person was a bit odd. That was a bit strange. Yeah. And I think this is some of the stuff that we're always talked about is so powerful, which is, you know, back to like, you know, yes, we like strange, let's have more of it. But it is that sort of dilemma for me that it's one thing getting recruiters to do a much better job of seeing the candidate, not the disability, if it's an obvious or a stated disability. Much harder for that recruiter or that employer to get it right if they have no idea.
So I've always come at this conversation about what do you do inside a company that's enlightened and wants to make progress. But it's just slapped me around the face that this is like a marketing funnel, and a lot of the problem is upstream. Yeah. And so, you know, if we as a group are focusing on what are the barriers, we might do well to focus on some of the upstream barriers. I think you've sort of already itched at a little bit, but it's a completely different perspective, which doesn't usually come up in the conversation. And I think it's an important one, because there may not be that much left in the funnel by the time you have an eager employer. Yeah. That said, when it comes to how do companies get ready to recruit, I do have a strong view that it's sort of a sequential and cumulative process. Jumping in with both feet isn't always wise or fruitful. So for my experience, the organisation first needs to give birth to the conversation, which is very much as Caroline said about, you know, vive la difference and having an exec level or exec driven belief that performance is improved through diversity, because without that nothing else really matters, because everything else will be sort of hollow and superficial. Then the first tangible step in terms of making a difference to numbers, for example, our intent is to match the natural demographic for neurodiversity and disability. I think it's first watering the plants that you already have in your own organisation, and that has two parts. One is making liberating the conversation helps in phase two, but phase two is for those people who are already in your organisation, who feel more comfortable in sort of outing themselves if the conversation is happening. It is the process of regional adjustments, which is actually the law. But many companies are abysmal at that. But that's because the reciprocal side is coaching and training people managers and line managers to fulfill their obligation in that regard. I think you've got to do both of those things before you even contemplate recruitment.
How you judge people on recruitment, which is often by a lot of proxy metrics, and how you judge people after they've been in the job for a certain length of time. I mean, it's very interesting that once you've been in any industry for about 3 or 4 years, for example, your university degree becomes completely irrelevant. I had a friend who worked for Goldman Sachs and had a first in mathematics. And he said, after 4 years, that counts for nothing. It's who you've worked with, what you've done. They're more interested in how you actually do the job than in what you might call the proxies. And so one of the interesting things is if you can get people on trial, after the first 6 weeks, actually a lot of those things become irrelevant, because if you found them a job they can do and they can do it remarkably well, all those other things fall into the background. So there are a few things. You can de-risk it by deliberately staging it as a, you know, okay, this is 6 months. See if it works. So changing it from being a kind of complete commitment to being, you know, something that you're actually trying out.
Only truly successful project I've ever come across, which is based at St John's in Cambridge. One of the colleges, they work with a local regional college that has a special needs department. They have about 300 people with autism at Cambridge Regional College. So they have about 6 students a year. So it's really, really tiny, this group. But they take their 6 students, they take them to St. John's College. They do basic maths and English at a low level, little classroom, because after all, they have to remain in education until they're 25 to get the funding. But apart from that, they learn to lay the master's table, they run the cafe for the students, they prep the food for the chefs, they're an absolutely integral part to the college, and they end up with a staggering 70% employment rate at the end of this. And that's not only from St. John's, it's from other colleges in Cambridge, it's from the local Sainsbury's, the local Tesco's, because they've been kind of personalized so well to work in those particular environments and those little microcosms that they're fantastic once they move out. But you do that for 2 years, you know, world's your oyster. But that's the only intervention I've come across. Generally speaking, they're very, very expensive projects to keep people busy. And yeah, you know, most of them do fall apart. That one is a rare thing. But what they do is they trial it for a certain amount of months or years, and they are bringing groups of people in.
The thing I love about that thought is one can obviously see the benefit to those who are not in work and not employed,
Yeah.
but also that would really help with the employer recruiter understanding of the differences,
yeah.
and being able to get to a place where you innately value them. So I think I love that thought of mentoring. I mean, there's so many, I've been involved in programs over the years, I'm sure all of us have, of mentoring, you know, outreach into schools. I mean, in my world, in the tech industry, this has been a huge focus my whole career, of doing that with girls, to get more girls engaged in STEM subjects and get more flowing through, you know, to university and everything. But yeah, I think that would be amazing to see employers pairing up with schools that have special needs units or whatever, to be able to get some more experience. Because I do feel like for most employers, they don't quite know what they're missing.
So first of all, I wonder if a way to approach the brief is to target the 1 in 100 companies that would really want to be special and go above and beyond, because I admire St. John's College in a way that I didn't before you told me that. And, you know, I just thought it was another college. I didn't have any thoughts on it either way. I do wonder if there's a sort of, I'm a big non-fan of offsetting in other contexts. I think people need to sort their carbon out and things. Caroline's sort of nodding, but I do wonder if there's a kind of diversity offset where actually somehow we can recognize companies and brands that do go above and beyond, because there won't be almost anybody in any audience, any stakeholder for any brand that doesn't have a family experience.
Yes.
And doesn't want to see people like their nephew or whoever thrive. So if I knew in like those awful flat markets like banking and telcos where you really don't care, they all just have slightly different colors, or one's got a garage slightly closer to the edge of town or something, but you really don't care, it can, you know, Tesco's classic computers for schools thing gave people a reason to prefer a supermarket over others, and actually planted the seed that they might be a nice company. I'm not sure it was born out at the time. I think they've been a brilliant company under its recent leadership. But that might be something as well to think about, is how can companies benefit from, if they are prepared to actually invest in something which is of benefit to the whole community. In most areas of sustainability, I'd expect to know about it and to reward them, whether it was fair trade or something else.
How many siblings, parents, grandparents, nieces, nephews, friends have they got? That's a huge market to be leaning towards. It would make me choose a product over another product.
John, just as you were speaking, the thought that came into my mind, which you echoed, is awards. And it feels like, you know, sometimes if you do want to drive behavior change, you have to appeal to people's own egos. And HR departments in particular love a good award ceremony. So is there something to tap into around recognizing the businesses that are doing something in this regard and creating that competitive spirit?
What do we think could make, what would be some headline impact ideas? I think that would be a good sort of move on in terms of outputs from this session, plus knowing that we'll have a lot of the other texture behind it as well. MD, out of the 11, 12 ideas, thoughts we've had so far, is there anything, and apologies for putting you on the spot, Naomi, is there anything that really sort of grabs you and you think, actually, with the time we've got left, these two pieces we should develop further?
Yeah, I think the idea of the trial, of a lengthy trial, works very well, particularly working with groups. I think that would go down very well. It seems like a dating app is required. You know, you've got the goodwill of businesses that want to give it a shot. You've got a load of people desperate to have a job. How do they meet?
I was wondering about policy, and I was wondering about, you know, whether that's an idea for us as well. Whether it's about
that's exactly what this is going to be going to rewriting kind of the direction for disability for the next 5 years. This is going towards the green paper. It's going to DWP to find ways of doing it.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks. I'm going to be strange and actually end one of these things 7 minutes early. I'll give us 7 minutes to write it up. But thanks ever so much. I think the challenge there was the amount of ideas rather than having ideas. So I massively appreciate that. And we'll send something, but have a great lockdown.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you so much.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys.
Great moderating and great writing up of ideas.
Bye-bye.